Meghan Markle has been accused across the media platforms for being, get this, a bit of a copycat when it comes to her new series with Love Meghan. And I see definitely where they're coming from because it looks like she's copying Marchioness Bath. It looks like she's copying Catherine, the Princess of Wales, her own mother in law, Princess Diana, Pamela Anderson, Martha Stewart. In so many different aspects, you could see a comparison between Meghan Markle and other women to the point where she really does look like she's just being a bit of a copycat, and there'll be nothing original in her new series. Now, I have a bit of a different perspective because I do believe that there's nothing really new under the sun. So, in many ways, Meghan Markle can't avoid claims of being a bit of a copycat. However, I do think there's also an interesting case to make that Meghan Markle brought some of this on herself based on some of her decisions, especially those regarding the royal family, because gravity applies to all of us. And when you enter into a system like a royal family, there's a certain gravity there, certain things that always seem to happen to women, regardless of which family they marry into. And Meghan Markle, I think, thought that gravity would never apply to her. And as we're seeing now, oh, yes, it 100% does. So we are going to go into this today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany and I provide compelling royal commentary. So you guys, please hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you back. I also do want to shout out Anna Lucia Diamonds. I'm really loving this necklace. I haven't worn it in a little bit. I put it back on. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so absolutely gorgeous. They are lab created diamonds. They are stunning, stunning pieces for a great price. And I have a code. So if you go on the site and use code ROYAL20, you shall save 20% on all their products. They also have a jewelry cleaner that's absolutely fantastic. I have it right here. It's shaped like a diamond. It is absolutely amazing and stunning. So guys, feel free to go ahead and check them out. They have some amazing pieces, some amazing things that you can grab, especially post holidays if you just want a little bit of sparkle in your life. Because none of us really want to have the Markle sparkle, but we want to have our own sparkle. Isn't that right? All right, guys. So there's an interesting thought here. And it's one that my mom recently brought up. And it's like, don't you feel a bit bad for Meghan? And I'm like, in some ways I do, but in so many ways I do not, because so many of her decisions have led her here. And it's been mistake after mistake, terrible decision after terrible decision that she could have all avoided to actually have a decent show. In other circumstances, this show might have worked. She might not have been accused so much of being a copycat. But when you marry into the royal family, there are certain things that sort of seem to happen to everyone. And Meghan Markle definitely did not avoid those situations. So I will tell you guys at the end of the video what exactly I think that is. But let's go over the ways many people believe that Meghan Markle is a copycat. And number one is the ladybug caprese, because that has been cited over and over and over again in various places. Now, I will say, I mentioned in my first video on the review of the series that I thought they looked cute, and I do. But I also knew, and I didn't say, but I should have, that most likely that has already existed. I didn't think Meghan Markle was the originator of this because, in my opinion, from what I've seen generally overall, Meghan just doesn't really seem to have an original idea. She seems to always be wanting to copy people. And you could like that, hate that, what have you, but it just always seems time and time again that she's just looking to other people and copying them. And here's the pitfall thing. Like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. So there's very little she could do in this series that's unique or interesting compared to what has been done for decades at this point when it comes to people on television sharing cooking tips. You have Julia Child, you have Martha Stewart, you have so many people, Rachel Ray, whose show she was on, who have all done this sort of cooking thing. So there's nothing super duper new here. But the always a question is, did you take inspiration from something, or are you literally just copying it and not citing your source or seeming to claim that you are the originator of X? Because that's one of the pitfalls I could see Meghan falling into here, is that she claims to be sort of the originator or something, or she claims to be bringing something new, as she is in her show. But is it new, or is it things we've seen 1,000 times before, done the exact same way she's doing it, with no really original thought except for the idea that Meghan believes she actually has an original thought? That is the question. So, this will be interesting to see play out for sure, but that's sort of the copy number one. This recipe, if you could call it that, because it's pretty simple, is available all over different places. Meghan definitely wasn't the originator, but we'll have to see if she claims to be the originator or that she came up with this all by herself. That will be the interesting question. So, next we have Emma, the Marchioness of Bath. Yes, so the claim is that Meghan Markle is copying her show, Cooking with Emma. And I don't know necessarily if I would say that she's totally copying her. And the reason is that there are so many cooking shows. It's really, again, very, very hard to set yourself apart. However, I would actually say and argue that Emma did this because there's a very interesting premise, and I want to share it with you from the opening video of her series, which is pretty short, but I thought she added something where I'm like watching this and going, yeah, that is really interesting. I like that. So let's take a look at it here real quick. And I will say this is before she became the Marchioness. So you will see her referring to herself by a different title here. She is of Nigerian descent in addition to English. So she was the first Black woman high up in the aristocracy. So she has seemed to integrate quite well. Meghan Markle claims she couldn't. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Hello, I'm Emma, Viscountess Weymouth, and I'd like to tell you all about Emma's Kitchen. It's a really exciting new project that we've been working on, and we're going to open it in the kitchen in the house. So it's really exciting. We can't wait to share it with you.
So I like this because she tells us immediately why this exists. We are going to share this with you. It's going to be the first project like this in the house. I feel like these things are sort of critical because one of the big complaints I have about Meghan is that I don't know why anything she does exists sometimes. I don't know why the show exists with Love Meghan. I don't know why she opened up her new social media except to run this. Like, even American Riviera Orchard, we have no clue why it exists, what it was going to sell, nothing. She's given us literally nothing. And I find that very aggravating.
At Longleat, we have over 300 pieces of antique cooking equipment, which have inspired us with our recipes and products that we're making for you.
So I love that. We have 300 pieces of antique cookware that we are going to utilize on this channel to show you these old pieces, how we still use them or don't use them or share this. I love that. I love that because this house has been around since the 1500s. And so there's even, I guess, menus, and she mentions this from the time of King Henry VIII when he visited. That is so cool. That is so cool. That's a great hook. It's a fantastic hook. To me, I'm hooked because, guys, I have shared with you guys one of my ideas is I had this old cookbook from the Victorian era, basically, and you may or may not see a bit of a video of me utilizing that cookbook to make some things right before Meghan's series come out. We'll see if I can get it together in time. But it has old recipes and it shows like old things from the kitchen and stuff. And so for me, I read through that and I'm just curious, hey, if I make the strawberry jam, what does it taste like? Is it any different than what we make now? How does it work and everything? And the directions are very vague, you could say, in a way, because there's no like set the oven to 375 degrees. There's nothing like that. And so she's sharing something very similar here. So I feel like Emma and I are on the same wavelength. And it's not copying because I had the idea before, but I could take some inspiration from her. Not exact copying, but some inspiration. Because again, it's inspiration versus copying. Like, for example, when it comes to having a separate channel for the Crown Report and those little bits on it, that is because I've seen other channels who have long live streams who take the bits and put it on a separate channel. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So I took inspiration, and you could say I'm copying, but my stuff is totally different. But I see other people being successful. I'm like, wait, that might be a good idea for me. And maybe it won't work. Maybe it will. We shall see.
We also have menus and guest lists from dinners all the way back to when Henry VIII came for a feast at Longleat.
I love that. Again, that is so cool. That is so cool.
Visitors can expect to find Emma's Kitchen inside the Victorian kitchen of Longleat House. We'll be selling delicious products based on recipes throughout all the centuries, so we can celebrate everything about Longleat since it was built in 1580.
So again, she's sharing with us that this stuff is connected to the kitchen, to the heritage of the house, to history, so many different things, which makes all this so much more interesting. I feel like it makes it so much more interesting that she has all these connections that she's trying to play to that aligns with the house, aligns with her own interests. Very, very smart.
And also live cooking demonstrations will be taking place in the kitchen.
So, again, very smart, very smart.
I've always believed in moderation, not deprivation. So I like to cook a wide range of foods. And at Emma's Kitchen, we'll be using lots of wholesome local produce to bring you lots of fresh, delicious recipes every day.
So I like this again, the local connection there. People are very interested in fresh items. She's like, oh, I can get this fresh thing down the street. I want to say down the street, but down the country road is a more apt example, past the safari park that they have there, and so many different things. So I think it's something that will appeal to a lot of people. And I like that it's a short video. It seems like other videos of hers tend to be rather short and just really quick. Oh, here's a recipe. Let me show you. And I like that because it's simple, it's easy. It's not something too complicated. Because the risk Meghan Markle runs is that her stuff is going to be too complicated. It's going to look sort of out of touch with people, and you don't have the connection. Like Emma is working in an actual Victorian kitchen, sometimes with actual products from the Victorian era and older. Ergo, she's going to have some interesting things happen. Now, I don't think you see too much of that there because it's not like a true cooking show, but it is a way for her to explore interests. It makes sense. I don't necessarily, again, think that Meghan is solely copying her. And I feel like it's a bit disingenuous to say that she is. However, it's interesting comparison nonetheless, and it exists for a particular reason, which we'll get to again at the end of the video. All right, next we have Catherine and beekeeping because Meghan is shown harvesting honey, and we know Catherine has an active hive at her home in Norfolk. And so you just can't help but think, is Meghan copying Catherine there? An interesting thought because most likely Meghan's not really beekeeping, and it could be just a segment of the show going and showing her sort of something like that. So we don't know the entire context, but it's something where you see it and go, so is that original or is she just trying to copy? So, next little bit here is Pamela Anderson. So, Pamela Anderson has a show, Pamela Cooking with Love. And so you have the with love thing from Meghan. And of course, overall, it doesn't work with her to say with love because we all know Meghan doesn't really mean it. I mean, her father's moving halfway across the world in part because she won't talk to him. So it's like, what? Like we don't really buy it. So that premise is already bad. But Pamela's sort of interesting because she's kind of adopted this new approach where she's going more natural. She's had this big sort of career comeback with this great movie called The Last Showgirl, and she's very much into veganism and being a vegetarian, and so a lot of it is plant-based. So it's sort of interesting. I believe she's actually filming it all on her home on Vancouver Island, I believe is where she is. So she's up there in Canada. And so it's a way for her to share with people in an interesting and unique way. And she's always been very passionate about animal rights and everything. So her veganism is just a huge factor in this. So it makes sense because it's a different piece. And she also had a documentary on Netflix called Pamela, A Love Story. So again, Meghan just seems to be delving into the realm. But what I think is the most egregious and most obvious is that her mother in law, her deceased mother in law, who allegedly her perfume Meghan wore on her first day with Harry to remind him of his mother, she signed a lot of her letters with love from Diana, which is obviously not, you have the from in there, but still unbelievably close. I mean, I remember seeing these letters where she said with love Diana. And so it's like hard to imagine in some ways that Meghan is not aware with that and not oblivious to the connection there. That to me is the one that's most critical. Like, yeah, I think she's copying Diana. Now, you could say the rest of them as well, but I think that one's the most obvious. That's most likely a copy of Diana because it seems like since the jump, like Harry's told us how much Meghan's like Diana. They tried to make her like Diana, Harry and Meghan. They made all these connections to Diana, ones that just didn't exist. Like Harry's equated all the, you could call it hate that Meghan's gotten, which I would argue is constructive criticism a lot of the time, and said that's because, like much like his mother, he started dating and married a woman of color, and Diana was dating a man of color. Like everything I feel like with Harry and Meghan in their lives is colored by Diana. So it's impossible to imagine that that was not a factor. Now, if Meghan admits that was a factor, hey, I would say, okay, well, at least you're admitting it. But I don't think she probably will because she said in the tag, well, I want people to know I was thinking about them. So I like to try to make a special effort to make people feel close to me. And so I just feel like most likely she won't acknowledge that. And if she acknowledged it, I would argue that at least she would be being truthful, that she's not probably going to cite that. I'm like, you're really copying your mother in law there. And I believe she is fully aware of it. And so that is pretty egregious. But why the comparisons at all, you could say? Because again, cooking shows are a dime a dozen. There's nothing particularly interesting or unique about what Megan is doing here. She's doing bare bones basic. Everybody's done it 1,000 times. So, why the comparisons? And what is this gravity thing I keep talking about? Well, when it comes to royal circles, and this is across the board, is that you can't get away from comparisons, especially the women. The women are compared to each other, especially if they're sisters in law. They will be compared to each other, or even sisters. You will be compared to each other. So, when Meghan entered into the royal family, she was always going to be compared to Catherine. Why? Because Fergie was compared to Diana and Margaret was compared to Elizabeth. There's always going to be a comparison. You're not going to get away with that. And once you marry into the system, you sort of take on all that burden, you could say, in a way. And because of royalty, it devolves into a greater level of scrutiny than just being a two-bit actress on a cable soap show. What happens is that people dig into everything because you are taking taxpayer dollars, and people want to know certain things because you are representing something greater than yourself. So your autonomy, your independence, and those sorts of things are sort of stripped from you in a way. In exchange, you get great wealth and opportunities. But there is a level of scrutiny that exists that applies to everyone. And the comparisons just will never go away. Like if Diana was still alive, Meghan and Catherine would be endlessly compared to her. Their mothering styles, their clothing, like everything would be utterly and completely in comparison. Now, I would argue 100% that Meghan would not have married Harry if Diana was still in the picture because, in part, Diana would have hated Meghan Markle. Because, in my opinion, I think they had the worst attributes in common. So I think they would just be like water and oil and just combust. But the comparison would be a factor either way. Meghan Markle, in my personal opinion, she wanted all the wealth, fame, and fortune, but none of the burdens, you could say, of royalty. And so she married in thinking that gravity wouldn't apply to her. She married in believing she could do whatever she wants without consequences. But the consequences kicked in, regardless of anything else. They kicked in. And one of the big consequences, and one of the parts of marrying into the royal family, is always going to be the comparison. You will always be compared to your sister in law. And I don't think Meghan realized that or didn't care or just thought, again, that she was so superior that that comparison wouldn't exist. But when you compare the two women, Meghan comes out, I feel like, always looking deficient. I don't think she was particularly accomplished before meeting Harry in some ways. I don't think she's this great philanthropist and everything that she's believing she is. And I think one of Meghan's biggest problems is that she overinflates herself to such an extent that I think she's unrelatable. And Catherine, by comparison, yes, she did not accomplish, you could say, great things before marrying Prince William, but she has also never told us that she accomplished great things. Meghan has told us, and her fans tell people constantly, how much she achieved before her wedding and marrying Harry and how influential she was and everything like that. When in reality, she was sort of somebody who was going to age out of the Hollywood system within a couple years before her marriage. That was the trajectory of her career. She was not a great actress. She probably maybe would have been okay with Hallmark movies, but that was her future, was essentially Hallmark. Now, they've sort of come to the conclusion that that's actually pretty lucrative, but Meghan Markle was on the Hallmark trajectory towards even just leaving the industry entirely because she's an older woman and a bad actress. At some point, you have to be a decent actress. She managed to bag the greatest, you could say, goal in history, which is to marry a prince. And she had the big wedding, she got the title, she got everything. But that fed hubris in her. Her ego became so inflated and large that she thought she could do anything she wanted without consequences. And when the consequences hit, she's almost, you could feel like angered by them. And it's like, but I could have told you, or anybody who watches Royals could have told you that was always going to be what happened. I still don't understand to this day why she didn't just date him for a while, leverage him for bigger roles, and then quietly retired. She would have been so much better off. Yes, you could say now she's made more money essentially because of the royal title and nothing else. But what has come is this greater level of scrutiny, greater reputational damage than I think she probably ever anticipated. And so you somewhat have to feel bad for her in a way that she can't do anything right. She can't do anything without comparisons. She can't do anything without criticism. But that's sort of the life you lead when you marry into royalty. And that's sort of what happens when you have this great opportunity and you squander it for greed, for the purposes of just simple greed. And everybody sort of catches on to that. And people just are continually turned off by you. Meghan, if I was offering her any sage advice, would be to just leave the royal stuff behind and really just try to make a career without so much relying on your titles. Like, live a quiet life for a while. If Meghan actually lived a quiet life for a while, her and Harry, and weren't trying to be so ostentatious, they may be okay. And also, stop with the soap stories. Stop telling us how wonderful and amazing you are. Stop having your friends tell us how wonderful and amazing you are. Because unfortunately, the reality of what people are saying is not comparing to your actions. In your actions, you've been dismissive of people. You've allegedly bullied people, even your own sister-in-law. She's not an original thinker. She wants to undermine other women. She doesn't want to support them. She wants to pull them down so she can raise herself up. But fortunately for the rest of us, Meghan Markle has sort of been called out by all of this, and she's suffering the consequences of her poor decisions. And she will always be compared to others, and I think always fall deficient. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.